This video will focus on the biography Agatha Christie, An Elusive Woman, written by Lucy Worsley and published in 2022. Lucy Worsley is a historian, author, chief curator at historic royal palaces, and presenter for the BBC. She has fronted programs including The First Georgians, The German Kings Who Made Britain, A Very British Romance, various Jane Austen documentaries, and co-presented a tour of Eliza Rose's Hampton Court. In 2015, she won Best Presenter of UK TV. With reference to having children as she is married, Worsley once said she had been educated out of normal reproductive function. Unfortunately, this dim view of families continues in her Agatha Christie biography. Let's take a look. First, looking at the cover, you will notice that the accolades for the book are linked to Lucy herself. One brilliant woman writing about another, that is what is on the cover of the book. Another review on the back cover states, "Reading Worsley is as enjoyable as reading Christie herself." So it seems we are reading a book about Worsley instead of mystery writer Agatha Christie. Next, the book is full of a lot of sentiment, including the ridiculous statements that there are no bad mothers, only mothers who have good and bad days. There are most certainly bad mothers. Mothers trade, abuse, and even murder their children, and yet Worsley excuses these incidents as just a, quote, bad day. On page 213, Worsley can seemingly not help inserting herself into the book, although it is hardly relevant, stating that she is a nasty old cat. On page 231, she goes into a bizarre tangent, stating Christie returned from World Wars I and II to a, quote, rest from violent masculinity. To pin these world wars, where 30% of Christie's first husband's generation died, on one gender is so strange. Next, the book ignores critical history. In describing historic archaeological digs from the kingdom of Nimrud in present-day Iraq, Worsley states the site is in what is now Israel on page 272, with no mention of Palestine or the claim of Palestinians on the land. This is very poor research, especially concerning Palestine was a British colony from the 1940s onward. Worsley does it again at the top of chapter 1, where she states, on 30th April 1945, Hitler committed suicide in Berlin. No one really knows how Hitler died or the exact date. The Soviet intelligence agencies reached vastly different conclusions than the British intelligence agencies, and many sightings of Hitler around South America have been reported after 1945. Worsley also shies away from using Agatha Christie's actual 1939 book title for And Then There Were None, and instead chooses to simply write the N-word, ignoring the fact that we hear this word on the radio all the time. Worsley tries to make excuses for Christie's timeless works who have been adapted again and again, calling them artifacts on page 216 because people might get offended. This is blatant capitulation. On page 311, Worsley describes an 88.75% tax in England as progressive, not as the highway robbery Christie deemed it to be, basically forcing her to work into her later years. Christie also had to be begged by her second husband to vote, which is not called progressive, and Christie refused to describe herself as a feminist, which is not called progressive by Worsley either, in the way that it ascends political boundaries. Nor does Worsley delve into why Christie could afford 8 houses in England as a working author, but Britons today can hardly afford one due to uncontrolled migration. Worsley also points out the recent devastation done by ISIS, or the Islamic State, on the archaeological dig for the review of Nimrud, but fails to mention that ISIS is funded by American and British governments. This is an odd omission since Worsley mentions the British and American governments propping up the Iraqi monarchy of the 1950s. The book is very subjective and frankly doesn't cover more than a reader would on their own with internet searches and the perusal of academic sources. There are also missed opportunities, such as discussing how the Agatha Christie estate was structured to survive into the 21st century, as well as looking into whether Christie's second husband was abusive, since he asked his graduate students to massage his feet, and many of his letters were burned after his death.